Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss the last point from the topic community, that is ecological succession. The biotic communities are not stable. So this first sentence is very important to explain the concept of ecological succession, because all the biotic communities or the whatever the habitats or the ecosystems possessing the biotic communities in the form of plants, animals, or the microorganisms, and these biotic communities are not stable or not constant all the time, but they are always changing into different communities or forms in a longer time span. So as time passes, so through a long period of the time, the communities shows the changes. So there are always changing, the communities are always changing into different communities or transformation or the replacement of the communities, that is the transformation or the changes in the various species of the biotic communities, and this happens through a long span of the time. The changes which occur in community, the changes which occur in community composition and the structure are larger. So there are changes or the differences taking place in the community with respect to its composition and the structure. Thus, in a particular geographical area, one community may be replaced by another community. So there is a continuous change or the transformations or the replacements of the species among the community. And thus a particular geographical area, thus in a particular geographical area, one community may be transformed or replaced by another community or by a series of communities. And this can be explained with the example of pond or lake community. This can be explained with the example of pond or the lake community, which fills with a silt, or a soil material and changes gradually from a deep to a shallow pond. So previously the pond or a lake which is very much deep, that get filled up with a silt or the soil material and become a shallow pond or a lake, and then transformed into a marshy land community. If it is filled with a sand and mud, if it is filled with sand and mud, it will get transformed. So the pond community, which is previously having much of the depth, or it is a deep, but gradually, or it shows the transformation from the deep to shallow pond due to the filling up of the silt or the soil material therein, and after which this will become a marshy land. And this marshy land, again in the course of time, the marshy land may be converted into a grassland. So the marshy land can be converted into the grassland or a dry land, and then get transformed into a forest community. So this is just a transformation or the replacement of the pond community or the aquatic community into a terrestrial community, that is pond or lake has been transformed or replaced, that is aquatic community or the pond community is replaced or transformed into a terrestrial community and develops into a forest community. So pond community is replaced by a forest community, or aquatic community is replaced or transformed into a terrestrial community. So this particular change will occur in a community over a long period of the time. So, in a course of time or over a long period of the time, there is a replacement or the transformation of the pond community into the forest community, and this particular transformation is only due to the continuous or regular interaction between the biotic community as well as their abiotic components or the environments in the community or in the particular area. So this is a result of changes or the transformation in the communities. So if the forest is completely burned over, if the forest is completely burned over, it remains as a plot, or a land called as a bare land or simply a ground without any biotic community or the any species. So this will become the ground. This will become a ground on which after some period series of plant communities grow up. After some period series of plant communities grow up and replace one another, first annual weeds, then perennial weeds and grasses, then shrubs and trees, and then the formation of the forest community. So these are the changes taking place even in the bare land, even in the bare land where there is no any evidence or presence of the any species or any biotic community on the bare land. But this bare land can also be transformed into a forest community over a period of time. So, this particular transformation of the bare land into the well-developed biotic community or the ecosystem is called as the ecological succession. So, thus the process of formation of new communities, is called as ecological succession. So, already we have explained that the biotic communities are not stable. Whatever the biotic communities present on the land or in the waters, that is in the terrestrial habitat or the aquatic habitat, whatever the biotic communities present or existing, that are not stable or constant, but they are always changing into different communities, but they are always changing into different communities or the forms in a longer period of time. The changes which occur in a community, leads to the change in its composition and the structure, leads into the change in the composition and the structure of the community, and thus a particular in a particular geographical area thus in a particular geographical area one community may be replaced by another community, one community may be replaced by another community, sorry, or by series of communities. So, in a particular geographical area, the one community may be replaced or transformed into another community or by a series of communities. And this can be explained with an example of pond or lake community which fills with a silt or the soil material and changes gradually from deep pond to the shallow pond or a lake, then transform into a marshy land community, if it is filled with a sand or mud, if it is filled with sand or mud, again it will become marshy land. So the deep pond or lake becomes a shallow pond or lake, then become a marshy land, when get filled up with a sand and mud material. So in the course of time, the marshy land may be converted into a grassland or the dry land forest community. So this is the transformation. This is the transformation of the pond or lake community, aquatic community into a forest or land community or the terrestrial community through the gradual changes, slow changes in the community, that is aquatic community, and getting transformed into a forest or terrestrial community, and this indicates or shows the continuous changes. This shows the continuous changes in the community. So there may be the transformation of the pond community into the forest community over a long period of time. So, and this is due to a continuous or the regular interaction between the biotic communities or the changes into the biotic community and the physical factors or the physical environment or the abiotic factors of the particular community or in a particular area. If if the forest is completely burned over, sometimes what happens, there may be a jungle fire or the forest fire, and this lead to the complete burning of the forest. So this forest fire or jungle fire can lead to the transformation of the forest community into simply a ground or a plot of a bare land. Simply a ground or a bare land without any biotic community. Without any biotic community, or there won't be any species of the plant or animal or the microorganisms remaining due to the complete burning of the forest, and will be transformed into a plot, simply a plot of the bare land without any species. Then this ground or the bare land, after some period, this bare land or the ground, after some period, shows the development of the plant communities. So, series of the plant communities or the plant species, after certain time, series of plant communities or certain plant species grows up and replace one another first annual weeds. So there is a transformation or the development of the bare land or a plot or a ground which has been formed due to the complete burning or the burning or destruction of the forest due to the jungle fire. So forest is completely burned over due to the forest fire, and this will be transformed into a plot of the bare land or a ground. So on which after some period series of plant communities or the plant species grow up and replace one another first annual weeds. So there is a development of annual weeds. First annual weeds get developed, then perennial weeds which will stand long time, that is perennial weeds, and the grasses, then shrubs and the trees, then somewhat larger or smaller trees and shrubs or bushes, and then the formation of larger trees of the forest community, and thus the process of formation of new community thus the process of formation of new communities is called as ecological succession. So it is defined as ecological succession is defined as ecological succession is defined as orderly and progressive development or the replacement of one community by another till the development of stable community in that area. So up to the formation of stable community, there is a continuous replacement of the transformation of the communities in a particular area, and this happens through the orderly and progressive replacement. So the ecological succession is defined as an orderly and progressive replacement of one community by another, or one biotic species by the another. So one community will be replaced by the another community, and this happens through orderly and progressive development. So during each time there is advancement or the progression in the community till up to the development of stable community in that area. So in the particular area where previously there is no community, or there is no any biotic community, or the biotic organisms or the species. So previously there won't be any organism or any biotic community, but will be the bare land, or simply a ground, or the particular area where there is no any community present previously. In that area there is a continuous development or the establishment and the replacement of the new species till the stable community is developed. So, ecological succession is thus defined as an orderly and progressive replacement of one community by another till the development of stable community in that area. The stable community is called as climax community. The stable community is called as climax community, and thus succession succession is the birth of ecosystem, and thus the succession is the birth of ecosystem or new community, and subsequent aging process of its biotic and abiotic factors, and subsequent aging process of its biotic and abiotic factors. So, so the ecological succession is defined as an orderly and progressive replacement of one community by another till the development of stable community in that area, and the stable community is called as a climax community. The stable community is called as climax community. Thus, succession is the birth of ecosystem. Thus, the succession is the birth of ecosystem, or a birth of stable ecosystem, and subsequent aging process. And so, after the birth or the development of new community or the ecosystem, the stages after the development, that is subsequent aging, and uh, the subsequent aging process of its biotic and abiotic factors. So, biotic and abiotic factors will also show the subsequent aging process of its biotic and abiotic factors. Then we'll explain the characteristics of the ecological succession. Characteristics of the ecological succession. So first one, it is an orderly process. It is an orderly process of community development. It is an orderly or sequential or regular. It is an orderly, sequential or the regular process of the community development that involves changes in the species, the changes in the species structure and the community processes within a time. So, the first characteristic of the ecological succession is it is an orderly process of community development that involves changes in the species structure and the community processes in a particular time. It is directional and predictable. It is directional and predictable means in ecological succession there is a continuous development or the advancement or the progression in a particular direction, and that can be predicted. That can be predicted. So one can predict, or one can have its clear evidence of the advancement or the progression in the community changes. Succession results due to the modification of physical environment by the community. So succession results due to the modification. Succession results due to the modification of physical environment by the community. So due to or during the succession, during the ecological succession or the process of ecological succession, there are modifications of the physical environment or changes in the physical environment, and this happens only due to the changes or the interactions of the biotic communities. It is transformed into a stabilized ecosystem during ecological succession in the particular area where the new community is formed. So this transformation or the formation of new community will result into the transformation of the previous communities or simple communities into a stabilized community or stabilized ecosystem with a maximum biomass, and the symbiotic functions between the organisms. So in ecological succession, what happens? There is a transformation or the replacement of previous community into a new community, or simple community to a stable or a uh, complex community with a stable ecosystem and having a maximum biomass or maximum number of species of the biota or the plants and animals, and they also shows the symbiotic functions. They shows symbiotic functions, that is the interactions between the organisms, that is the interactions between the plants, animals or microorganisms. So whatever the biomass or the biotic community, including all the species of the plants, animals or the microorganisms, they shows the symbiotic functions or the interactions between them so as to share uh, the energy, or the space, or to perform various activities, but reactions or the biological activities uh, in the community. So this shows symbiotic functions between the organisms. Due to increase in biomass, new habitat niches are created. So while ecological succession, due to increase in biomass or due to increase in number of species of plants and animals uh, in a new habitat, or niches or new habitats are the created. Means due to the increase in the biomass or due to increase in number of species of the plants and animals, new habitat is formed. New habitat is formed and niches are also created. Collective. Niches means the uh, functions collective functions of the biotic community. So biotic community are the species of the plants and animals, how they grows, develops, or getting transformed into one form to other form. So whatever the activities occurring in the respective species, whatever the activities which are occurring among the species or the biotic communities called as a niches. So due to increase in biomass or due to increase in number of species, there is a development of new habitat, and also the niches. Means activities are also changing. So whatever the activities performed by the biotic community called as ecological niches, and these niches are also created or getting transformed into other types. So due to increase in biomass or the new species, due to increase in the biomass or the new species of the community, new habitat or new niches are created, or since the habitat is changing or the biomass is changing, so ultimately there is a change in activities or the habits or the different activities of the animal or the plant species of the community. There is a continuous change in the plants and animals in a succession. So this is again the important event. This is also the important event happening in the ecological succession. That is, there is a continuous changes taking place in the plants and animals. The diversity of the species, the diversity of the species tend to increase with a succession. So as the process of succession shows its progression or the advancement leads to the increase in a number of species in the community or in the ecosystem. So diversity of species also increasing. The diversity of the species or number of the species also increasing with the process of ecological succession. Then we'll explain types of succession. In the succession, formation of stable or climax community takes place by several communities which replace one another in an orderly sequence. So, in the process of succession, there is a orderly, orderly sequence of the advancement or the replacement or the development. There is a orderly development. There is a orderly sequence of development or a replacement in the communities. So in the succession, there is a formation of stable or climax community at the end of the ecological succession. So at the end of ecological succession, there is a formation of stable or climax community, and this happens by the continuous replacement. This happens by the continuous replacement of the several communities. There is a continuous replacement of the several communities from one to another. So there is a replacement of one community to another community, and all these changes occurring in a orderly sequence. In a orderly sequence. So the ecological succession shows the continuous replacement or orderly replacement or the development, orderly replacement and the development from one community to another community, and during each time there is a formation of new community. So, and at the end of the ecological succession, there is a formation of stable or climax community, and is called as the ecological succession. So, the development stages, the various development stages of the community are called as a seer. The various developmental stages or the steps. The various developmental stages or the steps of the community are called as a seer, and each stage where change take place is called as serial stage. So, means in short we can say during each time, in short we can say during each time there is a transformation of previous community into a new community with much of the change of its species or with much of the change of its species diversity, and this particular stage is called as a seer. And whenever there is a change, whenever there is a change taking place in a community called as a serial stage. So which represents, so the serial stage represents community as a temporary. Serial stage represents the community as a temporary with its own characteristic and may of a short or long type. So each of the serial stage or during the each stage or the step of the development of the community during succession is maybe a temporary and having a short or long lifespan. The final stable community is called as climax. The final stable community is called as climax. The final stable community is called as a climax or a stable community. So, during during the ecological succession or the transformations or the replacement of one community to another community or previous community to the new community, during each time there is some sort of advancement or the development or the progression in each stage with respect to its species diversity, with respect to is species diversity. And during each type of change, during each step, during each step or the stage of the advancement or the development into new community is called as the serial stage. So each of the serial stage is having a definite lifespan, maybe short or long, maybe short or long, but each of the serial stage or the stage of change or the stage of replacement, the stage of replacement of one community to next community, one community to another community. So during each step of the replacement or the transformation or the advancement of the old community to the new community, and during each change during the each change of the community, the stage is called as a serial stage, and this particular serial stage is a temporary stage and is having some short or a long lifespan. And finally, there is a development or the formation of a climax or stable community. The ecological succession may be of two types. The ecological succession may be of two types on the basis of terrestrial or aquatic environments. So, ecological succession can be divided into two types on the basis of the terrestrial or aquatic environment or the habitat. Terrestrial or the aquatic environments or the habitat. Then we'll explain the primary succession. So this is a primary succession, a type of succession, primary succession. If the development of the community begins on the sterile area means previously there was no any species or previously there is no any evidence of presence of the biotic community. So that is totally new. If the development of the community, if the development of the community begins on the sterile area which has been not occupied, which has been not occupied by any community previously. So this is a totally fresh uh, land or a aquatic water body, aquatic or water body. So this will be totally new area. This is totally new area or maybe a terrestrial land or the aquatic resource or the water body where previously there is no any evidence of presence of the biotic community or the any species. So if the development of the community begins on the sterile area or a new area which has been not occupied by any community previously, then the succession is called as a primary succession. Then the succession is called as primary succession. Means primary successions. It means the primary succession means it means the primary succession means there is a total development. There is a total development of the new community. There is a development of the new community on the sterile area or the bare land. Sterile area or the bare land where there is no any evidence, there is no previously any evidence of the community or the biomass or the any biotic community or no any species previously present in the particular region. So primary succession means the development of the new community. The primary succession means the development of the totally new community on the sterile area or the bare land or the aquatic resource or the water body where previously there is no any evidence of the community. So primary succession, if the development of the community begins on sterile area or the bare land which has been not occupied by any community or any living species or a community previously, then the succession is called as a primary succession. For example, on a newly exposed island, on newly exposed or newly formed, totally newly formed. For example, on newly exposed island, the first organisms which start the ecological succession, the first organisms which start the ecological succession are called as pioneer community, or the species of organism is called as pioneer organism or the pioneer species. So, on the newly exposed island or the bare land or the sterile area or the region where the first organism where the first organisms which start ecological succession are called as pioneer community, are called as pioneer community or the pioneer species of the organisms. The process starts with a base rock or a sand dune or a river delta or a glacial debris, and it ends in a climax and it ends in a climax or when the climax community is developed in the particular region. This is also an example of primary succession. This is also an example of primary succession. Suppose landslide landslide exposes a surface of rock in the mountains. Suppose landslides exposes due to the landslide in the mountain region. Whenever there is a landslide in the mountain region or in the hilly region, what happens? There is a exposure of totally new rock or a new surface of the rock in the mountains on which first of all lichens called the pioneer community will develop. So whenever there is a landslide in the mountain region, what happens? Due to the landslide, the rock exposed below will become totally new, will become a sterile area, will become a bare land, or will become a sterile area or the rock in the mountains on which first of all the lichens called the pioneer community will develop. So on the rock, at first there is a development of the lichen as a pioneer community. Then in a course of time, spreading moss mat. So there is again after the development of lichen, the second species or second type of organisms or the plant species appears onto the rock after the lichen or a pioneer community, that is a moss. So moss mat. So complete surface of the rock can be covered by the moss mat which appears, and moss is followed by grasses, and then moss is followed by grasses, then grasses are followed by herbs, then shrubs, grasses, then herbs, then shrubs, and finally larger trees. The trees become the dominant community. The trees become dominant community and forest community is formed. And forest community is formed. So this is an example of the primary succession. So the figure shows, in figure we can see there is a rock, there is a rock on one side, left hand side. You just see there is a complete rock which is a sterile region or a sterile rock, newly exposed or newly formed rock which is formed due to the landslide. So due to the landslide, there is a exposure of the new rock in the mountain. So on the rock, the first pioneer community appears. So first living organism that get established, that is a lichen. So lichen represents the pioneer or first. The lichen represents the pioneer or the first species or the first community on the new rock. Then is followed by a development of moss mat. Then after the development of the moss, the species of the variety of grasses will develop, then herbs, smaller plants, then shrubs, and finally by the larger trees. So this is what the sequence, this is what the sequence of the advancement or the replacement of the previous species to the new species, that is the pioneer species to the pioneer community or pioneer species to the climax or the stable species or the stable community. So this is what the change occurring over a period of time, over a long period of time, there is a complete transformation or the replacement of the lichens to moss to herbs, then herbs to shrubs, then shrubs to smaller trees and then large trees. And then this particular rocky region which has been totally new. There was no any biotic community present previously. So total new habitat or new community or the new ecosystem is developed over a long period of the time. And this ecological succession starts with the pioneer community such as lichens on the rock. Then develops the moss. Again the grasses, then small plants, herbs, then shrubs, then bushes, then small trees, and finally the large trees. And this is happening uh, over a period of long time, and there are gradual changes and advancement or the replacement of the previous species to the new species and finally reaches or develops into a climax community or the complex or the stable community, climax community or the stable community at the end of ecological succession. And this particular region where previously there was only a rock, previously there was only a rock, has been transformed into a forest community, has been transformed into a forest community. So the trees become dominant community and forest community is formed, is called as primary succession. So one thing you should keep in mind that primary succession means there is a development or the formation of totally new community in the sterile area or the area or the region where previously there was no any of the community present previously. So and whenever there is a development of or the formation of new community on the sterile area or on the bare land is called as primary succession. So the example of the primary succession is the transformation of newly exposed rock to the forest community, and the development starts through the process starts with the base rock or the sand dune or the river delta or the glacial debris, and it ends when climax is reached. So this is also an example of the primary succession. So we have explained the best example of the primary succession, that is a totally sterile area or the sterile rock or the new rock which has been formed or exposed due to the landslide in the mountain region, where over a period of time there is a gradual development and replacement or development of the new communities. So firstly, on the surface of the rock there is a some sort of seeds. There is a migration or the movement of the some sort of seeds or the spores get transported onto the rock, and from which there is a development or the germination of the seed and the transformation of the seed into a particular plant or one plant species called as a pioneer community. Here in case of uh, the transformation of rock into the forest community, there is a development of the lichen first. So lichens develops first onto the rock called as a pioneer species or the pioneer community. So similarly, during the primary succession or even during the secondary succession, there is a transportation of the seed or the spore of the certain plant species which will move or migrate from certain other place onto the bare land or onto the sterile area where it germinates and plant, develops into a plant. This process of migration or the transportation of the seeds or the spores from certain another place to the bare land or in a sterile region or area where it germinates and develops into a plant. New plant is called as esesis. This particular process is called as esesis. And during the advancement or the each stage of the replacement and the transformation of one community to the new community, there are certain changes, and these certain changes is called as a serial stage. So there are several serial stages. There are several serial stages or the steps getting involved in the process of ecological succession. That may be one, two, three, four, or more. So there are several steps of the serial stages. There are several steps of the advancement or the during each time there is a replacement and the advancement. During each time of the serial stage, during each time of the serial stage, there is a advancement and the replacement of one species by the new species which will become more complex type or advanced type, and thus there is a slow or gradual transformation and replacement of series of communities from one to another and finally reaches to a climax or the stable community. So whatever the community which develops at first on the bare land or on the sterile area is called as pioneer community. So first community is called as pioneer community, and the last and most advanced or most stable community which develops at the end of the ecological succession is called as climax community or the stable community. So this is about the primary succession. So primary succession means the development of totally new community, the development of totally new community or the ecosystem on the bare land or the sterile area or the region where previously there is no any community present, but on such a bare land or the sterile area, totally new and well developed or the climax type of community is developed or formed is called as primary succession. So this is what about the primary succession. Next time will explain the another type of succession, that is secondary succession. So with this, today we'll stop here. Thank you.